Developed and published by NOTH, Tagline is a first-person collectathon platformer revolving around graffiti and sticking it to the man. Tagline piqued my interest as I, like many of you watching I'm sure, grew up on collectathons, and it's a genre not seen all that often these days, or rather not as often as I'd like, let alone in a first-person perspective. So today I'm lacing up my sneakers, grabbing some stencils, and slapping on a gas mask to see if Tagline is a game that belongs on your SSD. But before we begin, I want to give a big thank you to the developer for providing the review code. Alrighty, let's get tagging. Tagline is a game all about revolution. Light-hearted revolution. You play as a nameless, goggle-wearing hooligan who has found himself in the ranks of a resistance group fighting against the AVAF, a power-hungry government that has turned this fair metropolis into a monochromatic dystopia, suppressing all who love color and art. To fight back against the man, you complete various challenges of platforming civil disobedience, by use of graffiti tags that grant you special powers. It's a charming setup, and the Resistance members are a distinct bunch of goofballs and oddballs with dialogue that did put a smile on my face. Starting with the visual presentation, Tagline goes for a stylish animated look that reminded me of old Flash animation from back in the day. NPCs are expressive and inviting with simplistic yet charming animations, and there are some nice touches here and there to make the world feel more alive, like flocks of birds that fly off when you land near them, and a sneaky sock puppet that you might catch out of the corner of your eye. The general graphic design and their animations I do think look good and are fun to look at. However, the strongest visual element are the graffiti tags. There's a variety of designs and styles that were fun to discover and collect. In fact, collecting all of them is one of the gameplay elements. For a two-person development team, it's admirable work. That being said, I did find a lot of the visuals to be a mixed bag. Tagline goes for a monochromatic look that I assume is meant to represent the totalitarian control, with the splashes of color representing the people's resistance. Thematically, it's clever. The result, though, just ends up feeling monotonous and at worst boring, like I'm playing inside an unfinished comic book or a barely touched coloring book. I will say, looking at the metropolis from afar, it is eye-catching, but when you get up close, it's a lot of flat shaded geometry that looks uninspired, with harsh black lines used to break everything up. The color that is in the game does stick out well, but majority of it is just flat washes of color with virtually no variation in tone to give it depth or further character. To the devs' credit, the way tags are colored in is alright, with smart uses of negative space and sometimes other tags to complement. But it's a shame that they failed to realize that what makes street art so cool is the vibrancy and variation in their color. The tones, the contrast, these are the things that make their unique line work pop. In all fairness, the colors are tied to gameplay. Each color represents a specific power, and it makes sense to make them clear and easily readable. But they could have brought in more tones and shades and still achieved that. There's other glaring issues when it comes to the enemy designs as well as the UI designs, but I'll touch on those a little later. I recognize the talent of this game's artists, and I do think there are some inspired ideas here. But overall, the art direction was just not developed or thought out nearly as well as it could have been. The metropolis is broken up into 4 separate zones that you unlock as you go, with the Resistance home base, the crib, serving as a hub where you can purchase upgrades and chat with your pals. Each zone is a sea of rooftops, making for an ideal parkour playground. Here players will find various challenges and side challenges, along with hidden goodies to snatch up. Completing challenges earns the player cash and, more importantly, vinyls, the central collectible. Collecting vinyls unlocks other zones as well as upgrades and additional challenges. Think of them as Tagline's version of Mario 64's Stars. Here we go! The big mechanic Tagline revolves around, besides jumping, is the graffiti system. Throughout the city is a splattering of colorful graffiti tags that can be equipped. Yep, you just yank them right off the walls. And what's cool is that each tag has a platforming and combat function. So for example, yellow tags blast out paint not unlike a shotgun that can give you a mid-jump boost. Green tags give the player a charging speed boost that can burst through walls as well as enemies. And blue tags let you spawn your own jump pads that can bounce enemies out of existence. Even better, all of this works on a dual-handed system, meaning you can equip different tags to each hand and experiment with the combos. And as mentioned, while in the crib, you can spend your cash to upgrade your tag's power and overall effectiveness. It's a cool system, grabbing tags off the walls to use as a abilities is a charming concept, and giving players the freedom to mix and match and find their own combos is awesome. The problem, however, is the execution on these ideas. Let's start with the platforming. Platforming is the strongest aspect of gameplay. Mechanically, it's very simple. It's just running and jumping, and it controls pretty well with a good sense of speed and momentum. A hair floaty and slidey when you're trying to get real precise, but overall there's decent flow to it. The challenges spread across each map are all basically timed parkour ones, like touch all the highlighted buildings as fast as you can or jump through a series of hoops. One of my favorites was shooting basketballs through targets. Ha, yes! Alongside those, there's collecting challenges like find all the hidden briefcases or snatch up as many tags as you can. And of course, the combat-focused ones. Break all the stuff or fight off all enemies in a specific zone. The better you do, the more vinyls you receive. A platinum medal nets you 3 vinyls, a gold 2 vinyls, and so on. The best way to complete these challenges is by use of your tags, and the game gives you freedom to experiment with them and discover your own tricks, which is pretty cool. Although I do wish the game eased you in a little better and tutorialized more before shoving you off the deep end. There was a lot of trial and error in the initial hours, which did get frustrating, and some challenges where I was just plain confused on how to use a suggested power. There is a dedicated tutorial at the beginning which does a good job explaining the basics and hints and recommendations of which powers you should use. But I think it would have been better to gradually introduce the tags and have challenges where the players were forced to use certain ones so they could get a better grasp of them. When I got a hang of each power, I did find myself enjoying the game. In fact, it started to tickle that Tony Hawk Pro Skater part of my brain, where I was trying to figure out more efficient routes to shave seconds off my times. And the margins for getting top scores are razor thin. The kind of thing where if you miss one jump going for a platinum, you might as well retry. This game definitely encourages a speedrunner mentality. Along with that, I did get a kick out of finding the hidden collectibles, and I will say soaring above the rooftops with jump pads of your own making is its own simple pleasure. That all being said, when I progressed past the first zone of the city, the fun factor dropped pretty sharply for me. The problem is that the game turns into a pretty brutal grind, as the price of unlocking other zones is steep. The second zone costs 25 vinyls, which is fine, but the third zone leaps up to 70. And that stretch of gameplay unlocking the third zone is a slog, with the difficulty spiking significantly in Zone 2. And getting top scores to get the most vinyls becomes a limbo of hitting retry, retry, retry. It was daunting and flat out demoralizing. And making matters worse, all of the challenges from the first zone are just repeated through the rest of the game. There's no new challenges introduced. Despite differing level design, things become very, very redundant. It stopped being fun and just turned into work, and I found I could only handle the game an hour or two before I lost my patience and had to take a break. Thank God for podcasts, because that's the only thing that got me through it. By the way, there's 200 vinyls in this game. Whoever manages to power through and get all of them, my hat's off to you. When it comes to the platforming, there is fun to be had here, and solid mechanics, but the pacing and difficulty just make everything such an uneven, frustrating experience. However, it's leagues better than the combat, which... there's no other way to say it, it's just bad. Tagline's combat suffers because its challenges are absurdly difficult and clumsily designed. Enemies just bombard you from all directions, which can be disorienting as they barely make any noise and zip around the battlefield in a way that makes it hard to keep track of them, especially since they don't really stick out. They are monochromatic against lightly colored backgrounds. They don't pop whatsoever. Same thing goes for the danger indicators. They're not that much help because they're white, they just blend into the background. There's a reason shooters color these red, so we can see them. Then again, maybe that wouldn't have mattered because in combat you are constantly getting blindsided. Rows of sentry turrets will spawn right next to you and clobber you, and rushers will come out of nowhere and knock you right off a building. Plus, it doesn't help that killing an enemy up close may also cause bounce back, cheaply throwing you off. I wish I could say defensive bunny hops can help, but more than likely you'll end up accidentally falling as most rooftops have little surface area for you to stand on, and the long arc of your jumps exacerbates this. At one point I thought maybe the trick is to just keep moving, kill the enemies as I go, but no, this is just gonna make you outrun them and waste precious time waiting for them to catch up to you. And in the midst of having this confusing swarm of white papermen jostle you about, the game has the gall to throw in snipers and grenade throwers who have the ability to zap your powers away. Okay, perhaps I needed to experiment more with my graffiti. Maybe there's a winning combination that will help me succeed. Nope. Even if you have the most deadly combination, it won't matter because you'll be quickly surrounded and batted around like a beach ball at a Slipknot concert. When I started beating these fights, it wasn't because I was getting good at them. No, it was because I managed to upgrade myself enough to outlast them, killing who I could and sprinting towards every health pickup that spawned. It was like I was charging up the beaches of Normandy. And this wasn't combat in the late game or even the mid game. This was in the first few hours. It was flabbergasting. This pretty much killed the game for me. And it's a shame because the shooting mechanics aren't all that bad. I don't understand why the devs didn't approach the combat like they did the platforming, where it was puzzle focused and revolved around using specific abilities for specific situations. Less enemies that are weak against certain tags or are weak to certain combinations. You do get some hints of this, like using the green tags as a shield, but this is a minor example and is really not all that helpful. Tagline is a game I really wanted to like. I think the concept is great. It's nothing but good ideas from top to bottom. It's just that the execution on these ideas is lacking. It feels unfocused, the pacing and difficulty is all over the place, and the combat design is just sloppy. There was fun to be had, absolutely, but for me the fun was overshadowed by a lot of frustration. It's not a game I feel comfortable recommending, but I do hope the devs keep at it, whether it be improving this game or moving on and iterating in another similar title. There are things that work here, along with the beginnings of a unique artistic style. It's easy to see how Tagline could be special, but it needs a lot of work. What are your thoughts on Tagline? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, subscribe, share, and smack that bell. If you want to come say hi, my Discord is linked below along with my affiliate links. I'm Kirk, and thank you for watching this video. Stay safe out there.